Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Therapist Theater. My name is Josh Treese, and I'm coming to you from Music City, USA, with the podcast that takes a look at relationships and mental health through the lens of movies, TV, and pop culture. You know, if you were listening to a typical podcast, this is usually the time where the host or some pre-recorded thing would hit you with the first ad. Today's episode is supported by hot dogs. Hot dogs, dividing families over whether or not it's a sandwich since the 1800s. But this is not a typical podcast. Also, I don't have any sponsors. So instead of reading ad copy, I'm going to use this time to shout out Chance the Rapper's new album, The Big Day. Specifically the song, All Day Long. I was driving around trying to get some errands done yesterday when I was struck by the lyrics from the bridge. Hey, we made it. We made it. I'm feeling grateful. I'm here with my favorite. Oh God, I'm thankful. Our song, and we played it. So good, we played it. I just want to keep on playing. Yeah, I figured you probably didn't want me to rap it. That's John Legend singing the bridge, thank you. And as I heard the lyric, I began to tear up. Because that's my life right now. I get to wake up next to my favorite person every single day. A person that I've been writing a love song with for almost 4 years now. And just last week, we accomplished a big goal in our lives. More on that at the end of today's show. I love the song that Leigh-Ann and I are writing, and I want to keep on playing it. So, Chance the Rapper, if you're listening, thanks for the reminder of how beautiful life is. I needed it. Also, if you want to send me 2 tickets to your show at Bridgestone in October, email me at therapisttheater@gmail.com. This week's guest is Christa Malcolm. Christa and I interned together at Trevecca's Counseling Center while I was finishing up my grad school. She's now a counselor in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, who enjoys using art therapy to help her clients. So, let's go ahead and jump into the show. Dim the lights, raise the curtain, and start the previews. Welcome to the theater. Christa, welcome to the theater.
Thank you.
This is a little bit of a special occasion. You are the first guest I've had on in my office that I'm not sharing with somebody. I'm not subleasing. It's mine. So this is literally the theater, and you're the first guest that's been in here with me.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I like to start out every episode by asking my guest, why therapy?
Which is a good question, and I get it a lot, especially during the time when I was in undergrad and everyone's like, why are you studying psychology?
Oh, that's interesting. So you had your eye on it in undergrad?
I had my eye on it in high school.
Oh.
Yeah. Like I very purposefully went to Trevecca for counseling because of the art therapy minor that only existed while I was there, which is kind of crazy.
In the undergrad?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was an art therapy minor for 4 years, and it was the year I started and the year I ended. So I'm one of the only people. Yeah. But no, like I think back to when I was getting all of my like dorm room supplies, and we were at Walmart checking out, getting all of them. They were like, oh, where are you going to school? What are you going to study? And I said psychology, and the cashier was like, oh, so you're going to come work at Walmart with me? And I just kind of like, I think I shot them down pretty effectively. I think I was just like, nope. And like surprised my mom, who was just speechless. But I was like, this is how people view going for psych.
Well, in that cashier's defense, I feel like there are 3 or 4 majors in undergrad that tend to be catch-alls.
Yeah.
And it's like political science, communications, and psychology.
And business.
Business, yeah. And there's just so many people that end up in so many careers when they have that as their major.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, so.
Well, in his defense, too, like, he didn't realize that, like, I knew this is where I wanted to be.
Right.
He was probably like, oh, she just chose an easy one that seems like it would come naturally. But
yeah. And also I think there's something like statistically most people change their major 3 or 4 times in college.
I think I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I knew from a pretty young age. So when I was a kid, I went to a therapist who I really gave a hard time to because I did not want to be there. But when I was a kid, I went through stuff that no kid really knows how to process. And so my therapist, when I went to her name was Emily. I remember sitting down and staring at her and not talking to her. And I basically was like, I don't want to talk to you. You're just going to throw a Bible at me, and I'm not about that. So I'm not going to talk to you at all.
So was she a therapist or like a...
She was a Christian therapist.
Okay.
Or a Christian counselor.
Yeah. I wonder, like... Because I know that I think the pastoral counselor certification is fairly new. So I wonder if she was an actual counselor or just, I work at a church and I meet with people. And
no, she wasn't at a church. She was a counselor, but like I think she was Christian geared. And her response to me was like, I'm here for you. I'm not even going to reference the Bible or your faith at all if you don't want me to. And it was just a very welcoming, like, wait, you mean you don't have my mom's agenda or like anybody else's agenda? And like, I used to make art for her. I invited her to graduation, which now I understand she couldn't go to because of ethics. But she was like so game changing for me. And so I would say I was probably like 15 or 16 when I knew that I wanted to be a therapist.
So I'm hearing you say that Emily was somebody who you just felt seen by, accepted by, known, understood, and that left a mark.
It did.
Yeah.
And it was a space where like no teenager really has that kind of space naturally to just come in and like truly just release whatever they're feeling. Like not everybody gets that. And I think that was exactly what I needed during that time because everything else just kind of felt like chaos.
Yeah. So. And I could also see it being something like, because I think back to when I was a teenager, even if I would have had that space, I wouldn't have known how to do it.
Yeah.
So to have the space, but also have somebody who could guide you through how to feel and how to talk about those feelings, just seems like such a big deal.
Absolutely.
I remember there were times where my mom said something along the lines of like, well, maybe you should talk to somebody. And I remember very emphatically saying no. Yeah. Due to, I think, a lot of things. I had a stigma in my head that therapy was for quote unquote crazy people for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that at that time when I was a teenager, I thought it meant something was broken in me and I needed to get fixed. And that was like offensive to me at the time. Yeah. And so I didn't want to have any part. Plus, I'm sure the regular teenage pushback that,
oh, yeah.
She could have said something like, I've made your favorite meal. And I could have been like, blah, I don't want it. Yeah. Just because.
Well, and that was part of it too. Like I was being forced to go. Like my alternative was, well, I don't think I actually had an alternative. Yeah. I think it was just you're going to counseling because I was self-harming at the time and I was suicidal. And so it's like, you have to go do this.
Yeah. Yeah. We need you around.
Yeah.
And we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So we got to get you to somebody that does. So how did you get from being a teenager who felt accepted and seen and understood to wanting to give that to other people?
I think it was just kind of natural. Like I've always liked helping people. And that was something too, like as far as choosing therapy as a career, like you can be a really old lady counseling people. Like there's no real expiration of that career. Like if you're out in construction, your body can only withstand so much. You're going to get some serious problems after a while and just wear and tear. But like with therapy, you can do it until the day you die. And so it was kind of this thought of like, I can grow old helping people and it's always going to be different people. And so nothing is ever going to feel old or boring or, you know, any of that sort of like burnout that you get. Like, I know as long as I have the support I need as a therapist, I can keep this up and enjoy it and provide what I was provided when I was a teenager.
Yeah, I think I said something to somebody the other day, like, as long as I can think and I can speak and I can feel, I can keep doing this job.
Yeah.
But if I lose any of that, then like I don't even need to be able to see.
Yeah.
I just need to be able to think, listen, I guess then. So,
yeah.
So as long as I can think and listen and speak and feel, then I can keep it up. And sometime last year, I read Irvin Yalom's latest book, which was like an autobiography. And he talked about, I think he's in his 90s now, and he talked about still seeing a few clients. And I thought, oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Like I like the dream of retiring one day, but I think I like it better if it's more of a cutback than I'm just done.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing with therapy. Like I always dreamed of what retirement would be like, but I don't think it's something that I'll want to retire from. Like, I think I would get to the point of retirement and then just be like, I can't possibly stop seeing clients. Like, it's...
And you could also evolve it.
Yeah.
Like, if it's not one-on-one talk therapy, I mean, who knows, like, what it could be. It could be leading a group. It could be, I don't know.
Yeah.
Doing all kinds of other things.
Leading groups for therapists.
Oh.
Which would be really cool.
That would be really needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, being that experienced in the field, you would have all of these, like, young therapists, even targeting therapists who are right out of school, who are just totally fresh to it. That would be amazing. Well, now I know what I'm going to do at the end of my life.
Boom. And have it be different than, like, a supervision. Like, we're not talking about skills. We're talking about your heart.
Yeah.
Therapy for the therapist.
Yeah.
That's your podcast name right there.
Yes.
So I know that one thing that is very near and dear to your heart is art therapy.
Yes.
Where is art therapy in this whole story? Where is it in this whole journey?
That in my journey or in the movie that I brought?
Well, is it a part of your why therapy?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. What's its part in there?
Well, so I specifically I do trauma-focused therapy, and like I work with behavioral challenges and a lot of like a wide range of presenting problems and challenges, but my heart's really in trauma-focused and clients that are self-harming or depressed. And I think so often that specific demographic of clients cannot verbalize what's going on. And so art to me, like I've had some really groundbreaking sessions where we just drew together and just seeing what they're drawing and even tasking them with drawing things and bringing them in the next session. And I've had clients who proactively did that. They would draw things for me and bring them in, just capturing concepts that are really hard to explain and even conceptualizing. Like I do emotion wheels with clients a lot, where it's an emotion that they might not know how to verbalize, but then like they can put color to it and shapes to it. And suddenly they may not still be able to verbalize it, but they can at least understand it better and they can see it. And it's just this moment of realization. Like that's exactly how I feel laid out in front of me. Yeah. Where it was just an unknown before.
Do you try to lead them to verbally conceptualizing it, or is that kind of enough?
I usually ask if they can. Like, can you explain this in words, or does this make you think anything? Specifically, what kind of realizations do you have about this? But sometimes we just sit with it because they don't necessarily know what it means or how to share it in any other way.
Yeah. Did you have any kind of art therapy when you were a client?
I can't remember.
Okay.
But I was heavily into art at the time, and I know that that was one of my outlets for dealing with stuff that was going on.
I think that's been one of my favorite things about this as a career is how much of me can be in my therapy that I offer to people.
Yeah.
And it was something that I didn't even know could be even in school. Like there was a moment in one of Dr. Hopkins's classes where we were watching a Virginia Satir video, and I kind of realized, oh, she's being her.
Yeah.
So I can be me.
She was always her.
Yeah.
In sessions.
Yeah. And I think that could be, anything. I remember the first time I made a joke with a client in session, and it was like 3/4 of the way through the practicum. And I remember leaving that day feeling like it was this milestone of, oh my gosh, I got a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like in the room, because I think up until that point, I was still kind of conceptualizing myself as a therapist in a high leatherback chair with a tweed jacket and elbow patches and all that kind of stuff.
That's exactly how I imagine myself to look. And I just don't look like that.
Yeah. When that's not me.
No.
It's
joking in session and connecting.
Yeah. And I think I was also, up until that point, afraid to joke because humor for me in the past had been something that I used to pull people in and push them away.
Yeah.
Like, hey, come here and like me, but also you're too close, get back. And I don't know, I didn't know that I could bring it in a healthy way.
So it was almost like a wall. Like if someone got too close, you would put up humor to kind of
that was
deflect
step 2
from a serious.
Yeah, step 1 was get them close.
Yeah.
But not too close. So then if they got too close, step 2 was use it to distance. So, I think for me, I was really nervous. And then the first time it came out, it was so natural. Like I wasn't using strategy to move, and I thought, oh, that felt really good because it felt like a connection.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, so that's a tool for connection, but I also want to be mindful of that. And so I think in the practice of the practice, it's learning how to be fully present with a person. And that's like task 1. That's most important. And once you're fully present, then you just be yourself and like it comes out.
Yeah.
So I think as a result, I joke a lot less than I have in the past, but I also think I connect with people a lot more.
Which is really interesting because it's almost like seeing yourself heal as far as making those connections because you're not leaning on humor to kind of keep a boundary with your clients. You've found that balance of what that looks like to connect.
And I think also it helps to remember that like it's about the client.
Yeah.
So I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to feel like I have to earn it. I'm here for them, and what happens. I'm so curious about the art therapy thing again.
I know.
Like, I
can see it burning.
I think specifically because art is so subjective, and there are so many bazillions of forms of art. Technically, podcasting is an art.
It is.
And so I'm just wondering, in the interventions that you use with clients in the art, are these things that you're pulling from your palette, pun intended, or, do you provide them with different types of media, and you let them kind of form what they want to form?
It's surprisingly fluid how it happens when it actually is really effective. Because I can go in thinking, I want to do, even an emotion wheel. Like, we're going to do an emotion wheel today, and that's great. And I introduce them to the concept, and we work on it together, and I kind of check in with them. Like, as you're doing this, what are you feeling? Do you connect with these feelings, or are you able to kind of objectively, color them in? Or is this really actually, like, creating an emotional response while you're trying to do this? And that's very, like, clinical feeling. But I think about one time that, what what was my client saying? They had done a piece of art and showed me in their sketchbook. And it had to do with like a heart that was pieced back together with Band-Aids that they had drawn for one of their friends. And it just came to me, like the things on our heart and the things that hurt us. And I was like, I want to do an art intervention with you, and I don't really know what that looks like, but I kind of have an idea. And I was like, so we took construction paper and we took a heart and we tore it up into pieces. Like we cut out a perfect heart and then tore it into pieces. And on the pieces, we wrote down the things that break our hearts and the things that hurt and the things that just make us feel so constricted. And after we did that, we flipped them all over and glued them to another piece of construction paper. And after we had glued them down so you couldn't see those things anymore, we wrote on top of those pieces that had been put back together the things that provide like a sense of support and a sense of like,
wow.
a sense of connection. It gets even cooler. So we did that, and it was like family and friends and activities that just really bring life and like belonging and love back and make it feel like we're healed. But then we did, we took yellow marker because we didn't have gold, unfortunately, and we filled in the cracks. And so there's this whole form of like recreation, and I believe it's Japanese, where they put bowls back together with gold. Yeah. I can't remember what it's called. I wrote it down at one point, and it might be in here. I'll look while I talk. But
I just listened to somebody talk about that not too long ago. It might have been Terry on her Instagram live show.
Oh, that wouldn't surprise me. That seems like something she would do. But no, it was great. And like the entire, I can't find it, but the whole thing behind that is that there's beauty in scars and in cracks, and it makes it more valuable that it's pieced back together after being shattered. And so like the implications behind that, especially like with my past of self-harm, like there's just such a deep meaning behind that. And I didn't even know that going into that session. Wow. But we both left that session, and it was just like one of those mind-blowing moments. Like, this is why I'm a therapist, and like this is what art interventions look like.
Yeah. And I think it's another good example of being truly present with somebody, because if you would have maybe had an agenda walking in, you may have said, all right, we're doing this certain thing. Yeah. Whereas just by seeing her art and listening to her, you know, this thing came to you that, you know, was a gift. I'm sure a gift to her, but also a gift to you. Yeah. That's incredible.
Well, it's like if I had missed one thing that the client had said, I could have just totally missed that opportunity. Yeah. So it really does take being completely present on a weird level. Yeah. You walk out of those kind of sessions thinking like, who even am I? Like,
yeah. Who keeps the art?
It depends. I always ask, do you want me to keep this safe for you? Or, you know, like, and in here where, you know, I'll put it in a folder. No one will find it. Nobody will mess with it. Or do you want to take it home, or do you want to share it with your parents and family? Like, sometimes it's shared. Sometimes it just goes in my folder. But I leave that up to them.
Has there ever been any art that a client has done as a part of their therapy with you that has touched you so much that you wanted it for yourself?
When I was doing my internship at Tribeca, yeah. There were some times, there was like a painting that I did. It might actually still be there, but it was a painting on like a piece of scrapbook paper. There was a map, and it was this flower that I painted. And I mean, I did it in session, so it wasn't the client that did it. But I also used tissue paper, so it came off of the page. But that was during a session where my client admitted suicidal ideation and some like self-harm thoughts. And that client never would have done that. Wow. Otherwise. Like, the only reason it came out was because we were doing art. Yeah. Like, it was a day where we just kind of shut down talking, and I was like, what do you need today? And they said, I want to paint. And I was like, all right. Then all we're doing is painting. Yeah. And the conversation just started.
Huh. That that kind of reminds me of like a very like old school, like working with young men and taking them out to a basketball court. Like if you can get their hands doing something, then their mouths will go on their own.
Yeah.
And it's a little easier. But it also, but like I know, because I have had some in my own therapy as a client, I've had therapists who have used art therapy. Mm-hmm. And for me, I know that it's so much more than that, because there were times where I was asked to draw something that represented how I was feeling in a certain situation, and also write about it. So then I came in, I read what I wrote, and it was like reading the news. It was very clinical, like, here's what happened, blah, blah, blah. And then I was asked to present the picture, and I held the picture up and couldn't speak.
Yeah.
Like I just got choked up, and it was this level of processing wherein I had to recall the feeling, and then B, I had to conceptualize it as a symbol.
Yeah.
And to me, it was like the actual doing of the art was the least work out of all of it. Because I mean, I've been an artist for as long as I have been a person. And so I think with some of the other people that were in that same group, you know, they would talk about working on it, the actual piece, for a week or something. Like, how long did yours take you? I was like, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I spent 7 days thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And then when it came time to just do it, it just flowed out. And it wasn't a big deal. But then when it came time to share it, it was like a piece of me got cracked open that I didn't realize needed to be cracked open.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you're just not ready for it either. It can be really uncomfortable because it is something where you're just letting it flow out of you.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, this means all of this. And I'm coming to terms with that and recognizing it now in front of you. And
it did feel more vulnerable than the writing, because I think I felt so much more in control when I was writing than when I drew. When you were in high school and you got your eye on therapy, did you think art therapy would be a piece of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. I was very much looking for an art therapy program when I was looking at colleges.
And then just that 4-year period, there was a minor. That's crazy.
Yep.
What did they do after that? Why did they get rid of it?
Mrs. K left, I guess, or moved on, and she might have still been teaching art classes, but she was a big proponent of that. And I remember meeting her when I came to orientation, and she kind of solidified that of like, yeah, I'm starting an art therapy minor, and this is what we're going to do with it. And
wow.
Yeah.
Have you found ways, are there like one of the biggest, like, I think gifts and frustrations of graduating from the master's program is like, it's like now up to you to learn.
Yeah.
like I had this realization in one of the group supervisions that we had that, the master's degree is only a key that gets you in the door of the library where the real learning starts.
Was that when Dr. Hopkins mentioned that we had to do like CEUs after school?
No, that was in this thing with Dr. McCurdy where he came in and like did this. I can't remember. I don't think you were there yet. Because I think it was still in the hallway. No, you were there in the hallway.
I was there in the hallway, the end of the hallway.
But he came in and did this whole presentation on his worldview. But he had this diagram that went with it that looked like a solar system or a galaxy or something. And I just remember thinking, oh, this guy's freaking brilliant. And he didn't learn this in his master's.
No.
Like, he has conceptualized this over time. And it was this moment of like excitement, because I love the idea of continuing to learn, and also anger, because I'm paying a lot for this degree.
Yeah.
And all you're giving me is a key?
Like, you're like, I could have gotten a cheaper key.
Yeah, you give me a key to a room? Like, give me more, But has there been any learnings or trainings that you have found Or is this just something that's birthed out of your soul and out of your work?
Oh, it's absolutely my soul, because I haven't found any art therapy trainings yet that I've gone to. I mean, I had the art therapy at Trevecca, but beyond that, and beyond leading the group when I was at the internship with you.
Crafternoon?
Crafternoon, yeah.
Crafternoon therapy.
When we could have it, when people showed up, yes. And even that was just kind of an extension of my soul. Like, a lot of times I wouldn't really prepare. It was kind of just, I feel like we should do this thing. And, you know, it's beautiful outside, so let's come up with a thing about, like, what brings light into our lives and joy and like, how we experience nature or something like that. Like, just spontaneous.
Wow. So then I think connecting back to something we said earlier, when are you going to start your art therapy group for therapists?
TBD.
Yeah.
Soon, I wish.
I think that would be great.
I'd have to market it as art interventions for therapists, because I can't claim art therapy as a thing I do, because certification.
Oh, so there's not trainings, but there's a certification.
To be an art therapist? Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, there are trainings. I have not personally been to those trainings, but it is really hard to become a certified art therapist in Tennessee, because there aren't really many of them around here.
Huh.
So it's kind of a
weird. Nashville's a giant art area.
Right? That's the right term, catch-22. Like,
yeah.
There's a whole market that I can't access because...
Or you could use a clinical term. You could say double bind.
There you go.
I mean, that works as well.
Double bind. Yeah, it's definitely something I want to pursue, but I think play therapy is probably going to be my first pursuit.
Okay. So let's talk about movie.
Okay.
What movie did you bring for us to talk about today?
I brought Anastasia.
Anastasia. So when you brought up
it's a very
that movie,
southern way of saying it. Anastasia.
Yeah, I think I have bouts of it. I spent so much time in Southern California. Sometimes the accent slips out, and then sometimes it comes back in.
Yeah.
When you brought up that movie, the first thing I thought was, it's one of Leigh-Ann's favorites. That's awesome. Yes. The second thing I thought was, it's one of these movies that when I was a kid, I knew about it, but I never watched it. So like when I watched it today, that was the first time I'd seen it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I just want to know about your experience with it.
And there's like several of those movies I've never seen. Listeners, please don't at me. I've never seen A Never-Ending Story.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of other ones that are like really, there's several I'm blanking right now. There's a lot of I've never seen The Sound of Music.
Okay.
And yet I owned My Fair Lady.
What?
And I don't mean owned like I just had it. I watched it. I knew My Fair Lady. And Grease, which as a young person, like Grease is not like there needs to be discussion around Grease if you watch it as a young person.
It's so true.
Like, kids, do not change everything about yourself to get somebody to like you. That's not okay.
And also kind of like a support group for when you grew up watching the movie and you were like, they were so cool. And then you like become an adult and realize all the problems they're going through. And you're like questioning everything about yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I looked up to these people and they were going through this and this and this.
Yeah.
And like,
not to mention, when I was in California, one of my middle school students at his private Christian middle school, they put on the musical of Grease, and I went just to see what they were allowed to leave in, because there's like whole songs that you would have to
Grease
like
lightning, right? Like, isn't that super suggestive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I just wanted to know, is this going to be the shortest musical that's ever been put on?
Right.
We were able to leave 15 minutes in. It's going to be the best 15 minutes ever. So Anastasia.
Yes.
Tell me what it is about this movie that like drew you to it, that made you want to talk about it.
Okay. As a kid, I So I think about Winona Ryder's character in Beetlejuice, where she's like, my whole life is a dark room. Mm-hmm. Like, I was very dark from early
By the way, that is one of my favorite movies.
Oh, thank goodness you've seen that one. If you hadn't, I would actually have started judging you a little.
Loved the movie, loved the cartoon as well.
Okay.
And was obsessed about the cartoon.
I've actually never seen the cartoon.
Oh, you gotta it's around. Okay. You could probably YouTube some episodes.
Okay.
But it's also, they kidified the movie. Okay. So not the same.
Well, yeah.
But still great.
Okay.
Also, when did Anastasia come? It came out in 1997. Okay. So I was either a junior or senior in high school, depending upon when in the year this came out.
We will not talk about how old I was then. I was 6. Cool. For disclosure. You said 97?
Cool, yeah.
Yeah, I was 6. But I loved it almost immediately, and I really loved how dark it was. Like, it doesn't really hide the fact that she's being attacked by demons the entire time, and that it's incredibly dark and loosely based on historical fact. And
you're saying that Rasputin's body parts weren't actually falling off in real life? And
that, his little bat companion didn't pick them up and put them back on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was disappointing when I realized that wasn't truth, but yeah. No, I loved that movie for some reason. I just really resonated with her, and the music is great. I mean, Meg Ryan is just fantastic as a voice actress. She made you connect with the character, and I would sing my cat to sleep with Once Upon a December. That's the only song that put my cat to sleep. So I knew that by heart when I was 7. Yeah, little known fact. Could sing my cat to sleep. But I thought that the story of it was really powerful about how much she discovered about herself on the journey. And my connection with my own family was very strained. So when I hit teenage years, I really felt like I connected with that character, as far as just losing an entire portion of family to something.
Yeah, and she definitely had this deep longing to have that familial connection.
Oh yeah.
And I think on 2 different levels. One, she, in the escape from, oh my gosh, where were they? I was going to say the Kremlin, but that is not it.
That was my thought.
From the palace, wherever that was.
We'll just call it the palace.
In her escape from there, she falls, hits her head, gets amnesia about what happened. So to a certain degree, her longing for connection is about connection with herself, to remember who she is, but also that relational connection of, I want to find my people. I want to find, people that are like me, that I can love and they can love me.
Yeah. Well, and growing up in an orphanage, she never knew that. And so it's an entire side of her that just wasn't even developed. And so there's this whole potential before her of I could find everyone that ever meant anything to me, but it might blow up in my face, but I'm still going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most powerful things, because there's this expectation that, we are from our family, and our family defines us and how we were raised, and our heritage is such a big deal. But who she becomes is so based on the risk that she takes seeking out her family and that side of the journey, to the point that she really becomes her own person through that. And she becomes a clearer version of herself because she discovers all of that unknown.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So what parts of this movie, when you think about it, stick out to you?
Well, one of the parts that really sticks out to me, and I never realized it until recently, one of my best friends conveyed to me, he's a singer, and he talked to me about how much emotion is behind Journey to the Past. And that song alone, there's...
Which part is that?
It's right after she gets out of the orphanage, and she's kicked to the curb, and she decides that, and it's even before she realizes.
Is it when she gets to the fork in the road?
Yeah. Okay. It's before she even realizes there's this whole family that she can discover, and this whole self that she has no memory of. you see that longing for family and that longing for meaning and purpose. But like,
yes, because the fork in the road, if she would have gone left, was to the fish market,
yes.
which is where the lady who ran the orphanage got her the job, versus the one to the right, which now I'm thinking is St. Petersburg.
It is St. Petersburg.
The one to the right was to the past, where she could potentially Paris, not St. Petersburg.
Was it to Paris? No, they take her to Paris.
Yeah.
It's to St. Petersburg. They meet in St. Petersburg.
Got it. So it's journeying to which this is like very therapeutic. Like it's journeying to the past, which can take us to the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that song in a children's movie. That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much feeling behind it. That's what really stood out to me. Like, I never noticed how much heart and how much confusion and just uncertainty. Because at one point she's just contemplating like home, love, family. Like there was a time that I knew this. I had to have known this. And like I'll never be complete until I find it. And that's what really stood out to me as far as like the journey is where she discovered herself, is that she felt like she needed to know what that was in order to understand who she's going to be.
Yeah.
But when she finds it, it's just kind of a reassurance that, you know, she has more meaning than she was probably ever told as a kid in the orphanage.
Or certainly that she can remember.
Yeah. But it's almost a closure.
Yeah.
When she does meet her grandmother and they reconnect. There's no urgency to be who she was. She suddenly has this whole opportunity open to her to be whoever she wants to be.
So like really brief, like TLDR version of the story. Emperor and Empress of Russia, they are celebrating something. And
I think it's the Tsar.
Is it Tsar?
I think.
Okay.
But we won't get hung up on terminology.
Yeah, so certainly the royalty of Russia.
Yes.
And they have their daughter there, and the I want to say it was Empress because her grandmother's title was Dowager Empress.
Yeah.
She was there, and in comes Rasputin. Yes. Rasputin, I think, was the name of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles character.
Oh.
Which.
Okay.
Maybe that will be the movie that I talk about on an episode that I do is Turtles.
I'll have to stay tuned for that one.
Which version of the Turtles, I'm not going to say.
Okay.
But he comes in and ends up putting a curse on the family, which ends up killing the parents. The grandmother and her are able to escape because of a boy who works there, Dmitri, who like opens up a wall. There's like a secret door, and he gets them out. Takes them to a train station that's going to Paris. They're late for the train. Grandma gets on. Anastasia is running to catch up. Doesn't quite make it. Falls hits her head.
Tracks,
yeah. But Grandma had given her a music box as a gift, which then it becomes a mystery.
To remember her while she's in Paris.
Yes.
Because she was going to Paris and was leaving her behind.
Yes. And then in trying to escape was going to take her with her. That didn't happen. She gets amnesia. So the music box becomes almost like a mystery unto itself. I know this means something. I can't figure out what it means. Yeah. So Grandma was a very significant relationship to her already. But then now that this has happened, she's the only family she has left, and she doesn't even know that she's alive.
Yeah.
So then when she gets to
St. Petersburg,
she ends up meeting back up with Dmitri, and he was voiced by Kelsey Grammer, and I can't remember the character's name.
I can't either.
Vladimir? I don't know.
I think so. Oh.
Yeah, but they have a plan that they're going to hold auditions for girls that maybe look like Anastasia, take her to the grandmother, get the reward that she has out for her.
Yeah.
And then they find her, and the story continues. But I one of the thoughts that I had, a question that I had was, I wonder if none of that had happened, so she just grows up like a regular, normal princess. Mm. Would she be the same Anastasia that she is in the end of this story, where she forgot who she was, she met these guys, she had this whole journey, she reconnects with family, and then now she is who she is now?
I mean, I feel like that's like an obvious resounding no.
Yeah.
But I also can't pinpoint who she would have become.
Because she seemed as a kid like fairly well-adjusted, very friendly. It wasn't like the prince at the beginning of Beauty and the Beast.
Right. Who turned away the...
Yeah, which I did get a big Beauty and the Beast vibe from this, but it may have just been like an era that it was taking place in.
Maybe. I mean, it's also French. I mean, St. Petersburg isn't, but Paris. Yeah. You go to Paris in this. So there's France. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I think she would have been very different. And I mean, that's something that really stood out to me too, just the way that the characters develop. Dimitri changes over the course of the movie. The grandmother changes. And those two in particular are interesting because you see passion turn to anger or look like anger. And that's something I tell my clients constantly. I'm like, anger's passion. And I had one client a long time ago who struggled with very serious anger, and she just felt like she was broken or something. And I'm like, it's not bad. Mm-hmm. How you use your anger can be a bad outlet for it. You can hurt other people, but ultimately it comes down to passion. And she didn't understand it when I told her that, but I was like, well, what makes you angry? And it was when somebody was attacking her and somebody else wasn't standing up for her who should have. I'm like, it's your passion. It's because they were attacking something you're passionate about. And in the case of the grandmother, well, I'll get back to grandmother. Dimitri gets angry in the movie because he starts realizing, like, this is actually Anastasia. And there's this whole connection that deserves to be there. Like, at a certain point, it doesn't become about the money anymore. Mm-hmm. It's about reconnecting these two people who really love each other and who are both losing hope, especially the grandmother was losing hope. And you see it present as anger, all that passion. And I just think that's an interesting side of it. With the grandmother, she's almost like... what would have happened to Anastasia if she hadn't found belonging and hadn't found her family? Because you see her becoming this bitter old woman who is seeking that connection and who just keeps, like, the risk just keeps hitting her.
Well, she's losing
and
hope.
Destroying her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, the risk of seeking is not panning out for her. The risk of seeking for Anastasia is growing her as a person. Mm-hmm. But it's the same risk of seeking belonging, connection. Mm-hmm. You just see it from two different sides. And it got to the point where the grandmother was shutting down and wasn't willing to seek it anymore. And you almost see Anastasia get to that point, but then... Grandma
says something along the lines of, I don't want to meet any more girls who it could be. I just want to live the rest of my life in peace alone or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's the denial of the grieving of the loss of hope to where it's too painful to continue the search. I don't want to feel the pain, so just leave me alone and I'll do whatever it is that I need to do.
Yeah.
When you said the thing about Dimitri, I think that is a beautiful example of anger and the gift of anger, which is passion. Yeah. So, I mean, we have talked a lot about the voice of the heart on the show. Anger being the alert that says, I see something that I think is wrong. Mm-hmm. And then if we can lean into our anger and understand what it is that it's telling us and to fully experience it, the gift that we receive from anger is passion. Passion being a very directional feeling. It's an outgoing, it flows out of us because passion says, I see something that I believe is wrong and I'm driven to change it. Mm-hmm. And you see Dimitri's motivation go from, I want to get some money, to, holy cow, this is really her, who he had some relationship with as a kid.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even just an empty, I want to fulfill my duty as a Russian person to reunite this family.
Right.
But this is somebody I cared about once, and I recognize this longing and desire in them to be reunited, and I want to be a part of that. I see something that I think is wrong, which is the separation of this family, and I'm driven to change that. I'm driven to reunite them, even to the point where he is offered the money from grandma and denies it and says, it's not about the money. I don't want the money.
Right.
It's about you guys and wanting to have you back together.
Yeah.
And that is a really, oh crap, I love the movie now. That is, it
has happened.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful example of when you engage your feelings, what can happen from that.
Yeah. Well, and even to that point, going back to the grandma who was saying, like, I'm done choosing to search for this. Like, that's the decision Anastasia makes on that road. She's choosing, because she could easily just stay Anya, the orphan, and go the path that was put in front of her. Or she can take every single risk and every opportunity to be hurt in order to find bigger meaning. Yeah. And that's what the grandma was about to give up on, because she had done it for so long and it hadn't panned out. Yeah. It's interesting.
What was it that was driving Rasputin? Like, why does he show up at the beginning to kind of ruin the party, so to speak? Like, what's he got against the family? Is it just a power thing?
I think it's just a power thing, but I think there's something deeper there. I'm just not sure of it, so I'd hate to misspeak.
Because I felt like watching it, it goes from, there's the part in the ballroom where he shows up, and then all of a sudden, somebody's like, yeah, so he sold his soul to the devil to get the power to do this, and they're showing that. I'm like, well, this escalated quickly. Yeah. Because it just kind of goes from, like, he's, I mean, quote unquote, a normal guy walking into the ballroom because he's wearing a robe when everybody else is in fancy clothes, to all of a sudden it shows him touching a thing and all of the skin and muscle being sucked off of him and just a skeleton. And then he's, I don't know what he is. Hey, everybody. This is Josh, and I'm interrupting the episode to ask for your help in getting more people into the theater. I'd love to see Therapist Theater make a dent on the iTunes podcast lists. And the best way to do that is by giving it a 5-star rating and a 5-star review. You can do that right now by visiting the show's page in the podcast app. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks so much for helping to spread the word about Therapist Theater. All right, back to the show.
This is when I remind myself that it's a children's movie, and that is actually a scene
but
in
it
the
has
movie.
Dark, yeah.
It does.
Yeah, and even at the end, like when she and Dimitri and he have this confrontation on a bridge and all that, he has a, I don't know what you'd call it, amulet, vial? Yeah. Something that contains a green liquid that is his source of power and also a source of life, since he is now dead. But she, like, stomps it to conquer him. And he, like, all of his skin and muscles fly off. Yeah. And he becomes a skeleton that, like, blows away in the wind, kind of like at the end of Infinity War. And there's, like, parts watching that where I was like, oh, crap, if I had seen this as a kid, like, I might have been...
slightly traumatized. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could think of why he did what he did. I know in the back of my head somewhere, because I've had a conversation about it and it's just evading me right now.
He talks about hating the Romanovs.
Yeah.
But I can't remember why.
I feel like he was turned away or scorned in the community. That's what I keep coming back to in my head. Like, he was looked down on extensively, and so it was like getting back at them for that.
Was there any kind of weird romance thing with the grandma? Did he like her?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No. He didn't lose his chance. She was still alive.
That's true.
That would explain why she didn't die.
Although he wasn't.
No.
Also, I had this vague memory of the only thing I remembered about this movie before I watched it. I remembered Meg Ryan did the voice. Mm-hmm. Did not remember John Cusack.
Right.
In fact, until I was like a quarter of the way into the movie and looked up who did the voice, I thought it was Chris Pine. But that's way too far ago for him to have done it. Yeah, but like I didn't realize how much the voices sounded alike. But the only thing I remember besides Meg Ryan, and I was shocked that Christopher Lloyd did Rasputin's voice.
Yes.
And Angela Lansbury was the grandma. Mm-hmm. The only other thing was the Bat, because Hank Azaria did that voice, and Hank Azaria is, I don't know, a quarter of the Simpsons characters.
Yeah.
And what was the Bat's name?
Bartok.
Bartok. I was going to say Batroc, but I think that's a character in Captain America.
Batty is from Fern Gully.
Yes.
So it was like a hybrid. Bat characters.
But I remembered his accent because as a kid, I used to imitate it, but I couldn't even tell you what kind of accent that is. It's just him.
Yeah.
And also, what's the deal with the pink bat that shows up at the end and kisses him?
I really don't know.
Where does that come from? Is that
necessary?
A regular bat? Is that a person that was turned into a bat? Why is she pink? Is she a sunburned albino bat?
Sunburned albino bat. Perhaps. I don't know. I feel like it's a reward for the miserable life that Rasputin put him through.
That's the other thing was he a henchman?
Maybe not.
Was
Bartok?
Batty a henchman? Because if
Bartok.
so, he was a terrible henchman.
Not Batty.
He didn't actually do anything evil.
He protected his soul. So he spent that entire time guarding the vial that was Rasputin for him to come back. And I think the only reason,
was he a Horcrux?
He came back? Oh my gosh.
One thing that seems to come up on the show a lot is Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the need to belong. Mm-hmm. And I think that was something that really struck me in watching this, in that you see this drive in her to find that belonging.
Yeah.
And it didn't, you get that little tiny scene with her leaving the orphanage, where she interacts with the lady who ran it, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it does, even though we don't get a full picture of her experience there, she kind of, as she was walking and talking to that lady, kept kind of calling back and saying goodbye and that kind of thing. Mm. So it didn't strike me as, and I'm kind of filling in some blanks here, she had a lonely experience at the orphanage. It seemed like with other people who were there, she developed relationships.
Yeah.
But was really looking for something deeper.
Yeah.
Something with roots.
Where she actually came from.
Yeah.
Even though she had no direction of that, just finding that.
And so I think that it speaks to this thing that every human has in them, this desire to belong. And it's such a powerful motivator. It's such a powerful, just this magnetic desire that all of us have. And I think there's so many times in life that you can see that drive, that desire, I don't want to say turn out good, but maybe be used for good. And so many times that you can see it be warped and be used for evil. And, oh gosh, I watched some documentary or something on some cult, and it talked about the leaders of it preying on young people who were orphans, who were looking to belong, and giving them that acceptance, and then using it as a tool, as a leveraging tool to kind of indoctrinate them and proselytize them into their own line of thinking.
Yeah. Well, I think Jim Jones did that. Like way back when. That like entire community that went out into the jungle and
drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, drank the Kool-Aid.
And then you also, you see it turn out like in this movie where this desire of hers, and so much of hers, I think, is the people that she met along the way. Because if she would have met Rasputin instead of Dmitri, this could have turned out a lot different.
Yep.
Much shorter movie.
Would have been like Grease at that school that you were talking about. The 15-minute
much shorter movie.
Yeah.
But that need to belong, I feel like, is something that can connect every single person on this planet. And it even makes me think about how it seems like, in the times that we're living in right now, it's so divisive. And I'm not even talking about just politically. Like, it seems like it's about everything. You're either this side or that side. You're A or you're B. You're black or you're white. You're this or you're that. And I think it's that mirror image, darkest timeline kind of version of, I want to belong. And so to do that, I'll sign on with a team that seems to be more against something than it's for something. But it's all in this need that I don't want to be alone. So I'm going to be with this group.
When you're driven to a purpose, too.
Yeah.
Even if it's against something.
Yeah. It's
still a direction.
So, and that's another one of the hierarchy of needs is like meaning. So you're getting both. You're getting the belonging, you're getting the meaning. And it's meeting two big areas in a person's soul. But it's just being done in this gross funhouse mirror, darkest timeline kind of way.
Well, here's something that'll really throw you. Think about belonging in the sense of Dimitri's journey. Like if you look at the entire movie from Dimitri's perspective. So that's somebody who, I think he was a servant in the palace, who as a servant probably didn't necessarily feel like he belonged within that royal community. But when you see him again, he's finding girls to throw into a family so that he can get money to belong in society. And through the journey with Anastasia, he realizes what it actually means to belong, both with Vlad and with Anastasia as their little like friend family dynamic, but also to see her finding belonging, to see the hurt in the grandmother who's seeking belonging and who's trying to reconnect, and just how powerful that is and how much he transforms through that journey, because he denies what he thought he needed in order to belong, because he finds what belonging actually looks like.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a good point too, because I think as a kid, if he did feel like he belonged at the palace, it was with a I don't have a better way to say it, a lower caste of people, the servants kind of thing. But being around all of that opulent wealth, all of that high society, probably feeling less than. So then that, I would say, is a type of trauma, certainly abandonment trauma.
Oh, yeah.
And then that became his driving force for the next, because the next time you meet him, he is, I don't know how old Anastasia is, but he's about the same. Like, he's an adult-ish type person, if not late teens, certainly early to mid-20s. So he has spent what's probably been, 10 to 15 years being driven by this. If I can get money, if I can get position, if I can get, influence, then I'll belong and I'll be happy. But he realizes that that's kind of a shadow once he connects with her, once he finds her, and once he gets that, oh man, I really do like it. It gets that like purpose of helping her.
Yeah.
For no other reason other than he cares about her. And he believes in what she's doing.
Yeah.
since he rejects the money.
Yeah.
Oh, which is a form of like rejecting his past self.
Yep.
Boom. Or maybe not rejecting, but reconciling with it.
I think reconciling, probably.
Yeah.
Because if he had taken the money, then it would have just continued that, I don't know what to call it.
Like a shadow quest. I mean, like an empty kind of. And what's funny is
it would have felt empty.
Yeah.
Like empty is a good word for that.
Yeah. And what's funny is like by making the choice that he did, he ends up getting what he ultimately wanted.
Yeah.
Because now he's going to be married to, I don't know, is she the queen or the czaress or the empress in the end? She was the duchess of blah, blah, blah. Like.
I mean, technically, I think because she accepts the crown from the queen, right? Or from her grandmother, the empress. So, yeah. I mean, she definitely, if nothing else, she's set for life.
Yeah.
Like, if she's ruling or not, she is rich and will never have to worry about living in poverty or being attacked by Rasputin at this point.
Who definitely turned into a pile of ashes.
Absolutely.
There's a couple of other things about the movie that stuck out to me, and part of it was the animation. So it was done by, Bluth.
Yeah.
Bluth. He was a guy that split off from Disney.
And Are you trying to think of his first name?
Yeah.
It's Don Bluth.
Don Bluth.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
He was an animator for Disney. He split off from them. He had worked on several of the really, really big ones. And
American Tail, right?
Well, that's what he did, but I mean big ones for Disney.
Oh,
but
I understand.
Yeah, he did An American Tail. He did Five Goes West. But there's certain parts where, and the ones that are coming to mind are parts with the grandmother, where you can see the same technique that was used in Snow White, Robin Hood, where they film a person and then draw over the film. And you can see that in certain parts of the grandmother, like that. It's got a certain flow to the animation.
Yeah.
In that.
Well, Disney adopted Anastasia, so it's technically she's like a Disney princess.
They adapted it.
No, adopted it.
Adopted it. How?
It's Disney at this point, I believe.
No. How? Is it a Fox movie?
Yeah.
Oh, so they bought it. That doesn't make her a Disney princess.
It does in
my
mind.
Not every female character is a Disney princess. Vanellope von Schmier or whatever is not a Disney.
Schweetz. She's a princess.
But she's not a Disney princess.
She is within the Disney
It is Don Bluth.
Yes.
IMDb, don't fail me now.
I'm embarrassing myself with my hesitation to say Don Bluth and name movies that he animated, by the way.
Here's the best part of looking on the IMDb page is if you look at the parents guide, there is, according to this, none sex and nudity in this movie. But violence and gore is rated as mild.
Mild?
Yeah. Also, alcohol, drugs, smoking, mild. Frightening, intense scenes, moderate. I'll give them that.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. If that's the scale on which they're rating the things, that seems pretty accurate.
It doesn't say what the studio is, so I'm going to have to take your word on it. But it does say Don Bluth.
Yeah. And from a very basic level, like, I do think the art style drew me in as a kid. It's very well animated.
He was one of the chief animators at Disney. Secret of Nim. All Dogs Go to Heaven. Titan AE.
Really?
The Penguin. No. The Pebble and the Penguin.
Yep. You can tell that's
Thumbelina. Rockadoodle, which is one of my little brother's favorite movies of all time.
Do you know, I didn't see that until I was in college. Yeah. I didn't even know it existed.
I don't think it holds up. Liked it as a kid. Watched it again. And it was like, eh.
I enjoyed my experience with it.
Dragon's Lair. Oh, that was a video game I played at the arcade. So is there anything else that sticks out to you in this movie
reference my notes.
that's meaningful?
I think to me as a therapist, seeing my clients go on that similar journey, of self-discovery, like if there's anything that I focus on the most in sessions with my clients, because some of my clients, we can't really establish like goals in the sense of like, this is one specific goal, like cope with anxiety, cope with this. Like sometimes clients just come in and they don't understand themselves. And so my overall goal, my hope for them is that they walk out of sessions feeling like they know themselves better. And if that happens, then my work is done. Because the more you know yourself, the better you understand how to cope with different things that come up. That's kind of like the foundation of mental health, is knowing yourself.
Or something I tell my clients and that is, the more you can connect with yourself, the more you can connect with others.
That too.
Because there's more of you to give.
Yeah. And so often we're raised to think that we're just supposed to give to everybody else and not give to ourselves. And so having that space is really important. But personally, the movie has more meaning because I just recently reconnected with family that I hadn't talked to in 17 years.
Wow.
And so, like, literally went on a road trip journey to my past. And so I think when you asked what movie I wanted to bring to this, that one really stood out because it was like, I'm kind of in that place in my life.
Yeah.
And so
it's tied to your story. I like that.
Entirely. Because from age 6 on, like, that was a movie that was present across the years. And a story that was relevant. Yeah.
I think, you know, we were talking about how much you love art therapy earlier. I think one of the things that I love the most about trying to take a look at relationships and mental health through movies is it's the power of story, and it's how story, and especially movies, can help us understand things about ourselves. Because it can depict certain things like a feeling or a direction or a decision. And if it's not an entire movie, it can even be a scene that, you know, I'm struggling so much to think about what I want to do or who I want to be or how I want to feel. And you see this and it just lights you up and you just go, yes, I got it. It's a way for us to connect with ourselves by almost like zooming out and looking at it as if it's another person. Yeah. And I just think it's so powerful. Speaking of another person, tell me something that you have learned from your clients.
I wrote a whole bunch of these down.
Well, that's why I never ask, tell me the biggest thing you've learned from your clients. Because how you gonna rank it? You know? So I just say, tell me something that you've learned from your clients.
Definitely what matters is showing up for them. Sometimes that's all that matters because I can try to guide a session and it just doesn't resonate. But I found, and like I kind of mentioned earlier, some of the sessions where I really just came in without an agenda and let whatever happen. Those have been some of the most powerful sessions because when you do let something flow like that and just kind of happen as it is, the client knows that you're there for them and that it's their time. If you come in with an agenda, it can seem like you've planned this whole thing, maybe with them in mind, but not with them at the focus. And that's not to knock coming in with an agenda because that's also really important. But having those sessions where you just lean into what they need that day, especially if they seem like they're struggling to connect or engage with the exercise, that's critical. And like the whole thing with play therapy is trust the process. And it's painful at the beginning because you just don't want to trust it. You want to see something change, but I've seen that happen so many times where I won't feel like I'm getting anywhere. And then all of a sudden something will happen that I just know that they've been processing something big. and it presents itself. And that is incredibly validating, especially when you're working with 5-year-olds, because you can't just, ask them how they've been processing their anger, like, well, what have you been doing to process your anger? They can't articulate that.
Yeah.
But when you see it coming out in play, that's really meaningful. And so I think just maybe in that sense, my clients have validated that me being me in the room is enough for them to feel like they can seek an understanding of themselves with me, and they can trust me to be there for them in that process.
Yeah. Well, if the therapeutic relationship is the therapist's number one tool.
Yeah.
And I think that was a realization that was really freeing for me, because I want to find security in knowing all of the things.
Yeah.
And then if I'm in a session where I don't know a thing, then it's just this internal panic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think getting to the place where I realized, I don't have to know all the answers. I just have to be there.
Yeah.
I have to be there with them. And that's the vehicle that change happens through, is that relationship. And for so many people, their relationship with their therapist is their model of healthy attachment. It's their model of a healthy relationship. And that is, that's enough.
And you could take that as being a lot of pressure, but really it's just being authentic.
Yeah.
And compassionate, and seeking to empathize with them and understand what's going on for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not trying to have all of the answers. I also wrote down silence is meaningful. Don't run away from it or deflect it. That has been the biggest lesson for me, because when you start running away from or deflecting silence, you can cut into their processing, and you can cut into just the power of being with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes that does look like sitting in silence. I had a client who, for the first 3 months that I saw them, did not talk in session.
How often did you see them?
Weekly.
Wow.
I think it was probably 3 months. It was very minimal. Like, they would talk if I asked a question, but it was very basic answers, and it didn't feel like we were getting anywhere. And now I can't stop them from talking. We run up to the 10 minutes or 10 minutes till, like the 10-minute window between sessions that, we need as therapists to kind of like come down and prep for the next session.
Use the bathroom.
Yeah, use the bathroom. Like basic human needs.
Yeah.
And I find myself like running it to 5 minutes because I'm so thrilled that they can't stop talking to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to just respecting that and knowing that they might be feeling awkward in the silence, but their mind is also racing.
Mm-hmm.
More likely than not.
Well, and I know, just for me personally, those moments where I feel drawn to break that silence, it's a sign that I'm in my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because that means, like you're feeling anxious, you're feeling, awkward, and so you want to do this to save you, not to benefit them. And so it's always a good kind of check and balance to remember, okay, this isn't about me. So
yeah, because you can tell if they need saving from the silence. They'll look really awkward, and they'll just be sitting there like contemplating running out of the room, and you can tell that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you can also tell when they're in their thoughts, and it's okay that it's silent.
Yeah.
With kids, at least.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my experience.
It happens with adults too.
Mm-hmm.
I just asked I had a client get silent today, and I just said, "Hey, where'd you go? Where'd you go?"
That's so cool.
And it's just an invitation to say, hey, you don't have to do this alone inside.
Mm-hmm.
And for him, he talked a little bit about thinking that he had to kind of get it all straight and cleaned up before he let it out. Kind of I need to draw the message out of the mess before I let it out. And I'm like, hey, this is a place where It's okay to dump it all out on the floor and us to sort through it together.
That makes me think about your art therapy comment earlier, where it was easier to share what you wrote versus what you drew.
Yeah.
Because that's the mess that's not cleaned up and organized. That's not what you're ready to present. It's what's coming out on the paper.
And in fact, like the first time that my therapist invited me to write a letter, I tried 3 times during the week before the next session and couldn't write a word because in my head I wanted to structure it and I wanted there to be a beginning and a middle and an end, but I had so many thoughts and feelings that they bottlenecked and I couldn't get any out.
Yeah.
So what I did, and this is something that I use with clients now, is I put in my headphones into my iPhone and I brought up the voice memo app and I just talked. It because when I tried to write, I bound myself to wanting structure. But when I talked, I could do like train of thought kind of thing. And then I went back and listened to it all again and structured it. But I got it out. And that was the main thing. And I'll tell clients now, like, listen, some of the stuff we do, it's just a tool. And if the tool's not helpful, throw the tool down and get another tool.
Yeah.
So like if I say, hey, write a letter and you can't write, pull up your voice memo or grab an easel and a canvas and go to it. Like if it's about helping you and you find it doesn't help, get rid of it. Yeah. We don't need to do that.
It's really about them understanding what the purpose of it is. Yeah. So they can find the best way to go about it that fits them. And if the purpose doesn't fit them, then you know right away, like, this isn't even relevant to your journey. Yeah. This is just something that I'm trying to put on you. And you know immediately.
Which that's another thing that I tell my clients is I don't do smoke and mirrors. So, like, anytime I ask you to do something, I want to tell you why I'm asking you to do it. Because I don't believe in a because I said so model. No. Like, that doesn't work for me because that's not, I wouldn't accept that as a client. So I don't want to put that out there as a therapist. I'd rather them know, here's the method behind the madness. Here's the purpose. So that they can think critically about, oh, this doesn't really work for me. We got to find something different. And I'm like, cool. That's great. Yeah. Please say your needs and your thoughts. Like, have a voice. Yeah. This is you and me together. It's not me lecturing at you or talking at you. It's us walking this together. It's really you doing more than me. I'm just... yeah. I'm the bumpers on the bowling alley. I'm just keeping you in the lane. So let's say that somebody was listening to this episode today and they just thought, oh my gosh, I love her. I think I can really connect with her. I would love to see her as a client. I'd love to have my kids see her as a client. How can they get a hold of you?
My Psychology Today profile is a good source. I'm also on, I believe I'm on the website for Connect Counseling.
Do you know what that website is?
No. Trick question. I'm the worst employee. I don't even know our website. No. It's Connect Counseling Center, LLC. There's an office in Clarksville that's like the main office that we operate out of. But I operate out of Mount Juliet. And there's only a handful of us who do right now. We're still growing that team. But my Psychology Today profile, like, I get the emails, I get the phone calls. So that would be a good way to connect. Nice. I am not on social media.
It is connectcounselingcenter.com.
Okay.
Boom. How can they find you on Psychology Today? Psychology Today, find a therapist, and then what do they type in?
Christa Malcolm.
Boom. Yep. Very cool. Well, Christa, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think, this might have been the first time I've had a chance to sit with you since I finished at Trevecca.
I think so.
So it's like, it's just a win-win-win on so many levels. Yeah. And I'm just so happy that you were able to do it.
I am too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my love.
Hello.
So we have been talking for a few weeks now,
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3, about some exciting things that have been happening that have taken up almost all of our time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been 2 times in the past 3 weeks that the show is posted late because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And now that that is all settled and everything is done-ish, I feel pretty good about saying what it is now. It's definitely not pregnancy. Yeah, just to clarify that.
While you've been saying the little hints, I have 100% thought to myself, oh, everyone is going to think that I'm pregnant.
Unless they thought I was pregnant.
I doubt that.
Yeah, probably right. So what's been going on?
We bought a house.
We bought a house.
A townhouse, to be specific. We're going to move all of our things there, and we're going to just do some living in a house that we own.
So, you got to hear the convo with Christa.
I sure did.
Yeah.
And you guys talked about Anastasia, which I love.
It's true. Although I got to say, I prepared for the conversation thinking we were talking about Anastasia, and that would have been a completely different conversation.
Did you like the movie, especially now that you've recorded a podcast on it?
It's true. I did like the movie quite a bit. I'm a big fan of Don Bluth's animation, and I think that I like going into the movie. So like, I had never seen it before.
Mm-hmm. Despite me loving it.
It's true. Because you loved it.
Your track record now is that Pride and Prejudice and Anastasia are 2 movies that I love that I would have wanted you to watch that you didn't watch until the podcast. So we got to start working on my list of movies that I love.
It's true. Yeah. Feel free to speak your needs and your desires to watch these.
Yeah.
And then we'll. I was saying.
You like Don Bluth's animation. And
yeah. Oh, so like you knew that I hadn't seen it before. I think that it came out in '97. I was like either a senior or junior in high school, and so I think it was one of these where it didn't hit at the right time, and I really never would have wanted to watch it. Like I was vaguely
it's understandable.
Yeah, I was like vaguely aware of it. Like I knew of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure I remember the Burger King kids meal toys of it.
Oh.
But like watching it, and I think it's another great example of talking to somebody who's passionate about it and ending up really, really loving it. I think it was really good. I think, yeah, I really did like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, good, because I like it too. Let's buy it. Actually, I might have it.
Yeah.
I don't remember. But yeah, it was great. And it was really cool. It was cool for me. Like, I love the movie, but it was cool to hear from Christa, who, like, really loves the movie. And it sounds like it was really meaningful to her, just, like, in her own story. So that was kind of cool. Also, when you guys first started talking, you were talking about the why therapy question, and she said something about like majoring in psychology because she knew she wanted to be a therapist, and somebody at Walmart making a comment that like she was going to end up working there with them. Anyways, and then you guys got into this discussion about like college majors and whatever. And while you guys were talking about that, I had a thought, and I said to myself, I am going to say my opinion on this podcast. I think that people should take time, like, before they go to college, they should take time off way more often than they do.
Like a gap year?
Yeah. Which I guess...
Did you do that?
No, I didn't, and I should have. I went to college for 5 years because I didn't, because I went into undergrad because that's what you did. Like, where I was from and in the community I grew up in and in my whatever, like, class, whatever you want to call it, like that was just the norm. It was like assumed that you were going to go to college, and then if you didn't go to college, like if you were going to take a year off, the assumption was, oh, they're never going to go back. Like if they take a year off, they're probably never going to go back, or they're not going to end up, doing something good or whatever. Like there just was a negative connotation for like not going right into college, and I have decided henceforth that there should no longer be a negative connotation and that it should be encouraged for people to take time off. It is. It is a decree, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because I just think it's valuable. Like for me, I didn't pick what I wanted to do until my 3rd year in, which is why I went the extra year.
Yeah.
And even then, no, I mean, I was pretty confident in choosing that at that point.
So Leigh-Ann's first podcast decree
Yep.
is...
Don't force your kids into going to college unless they know for sure what they're going to do. It's a waste of money and time. Unless they do, like, well, you could go get the first 2 years or whatever.
We may need to change that decree because we're talking about somebody who is a 17 or 18-year-old instead of, going then, making them be an 18 or a 19-year-old, which they still may not know.
I'm not saying it has to be a year. I'm just saying don't force kids into college right after high school, period. Listen, it works for some people. And also at the same time, I got like invaluable experience in those first 3 years and I wouldn't change a thing. And it led me to where I am today.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that there's no cookie cutter path that everybody needs to follow. And if a student who may be listening or maybe a parent, if your high schooler is finishing up and maybe thinks they need a little more life under their tires before they're ready to get into college, I think to explore that conversation to help them, go which way they need to go and to help them grow in their responsibility, that's a good thing.
It's a great thing.
Yeah. I know for me, I went straight to a university from high school. And I remember at one point, my mom saying like, hey, what about going to a community college for the first 2 years? I had this pride thing in me that didn't want to do the community college because I thought, well, that's not where smart people go. And then my freshman year of college, I failed my English course. And that summer, I went and took it at the community college. And it turned out to be about a quarter of the cost that it was at the university. And, being about 20 years removed from that, I have since realized I could have gone and gotten all of my gen eds and gotten it for a quarter of the cost and still ended up at the university and graduated from there. And I just think it would have been a smarter move for me, who was a terrible student at the time.
Listen, I think in reality, smarter people go to the community colleges.
Well, and I think that's what I was trying to get at is since there's no cookie cutter path, it would be wise for everybody to look at what's best for me, not how do I fit the mold of everybody else.
Yeah, you don't have to fit the mold of my decree.
Well, your decree was in favor of no mold.
Yeah.
So maybe that's your decree. There's no mold.
No mold to fit in.
Yeah, that
not
works.
Not mold like
that. Well, that works great for the decree and for the result of the inspection of our new house.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no mold.
Way to tie it back together.
I was trying. Yeah.
Oh, man. Speaking of teenagers and such, another thing that Christa said really stuck out to me. She was talking about her own, when she went to therapy as I don't know if she was a kid or like a teenager or whatever. I think she was a teenager. She said.
Say a client.
Yeah. I just meant I don't know what age she was at. I forgot that. But she said that she remembers like having a moment with her therapist where she was like, oh, wait, so you don't have my mom's agenda or like anyone else's agenda? And I just think that's so powerful. And like, she's a good example of how powerful that is for a kid. Like, and it's, I think because there's so many people in a child's life who have agendas, if you think about it, like, and maybe not all of the people, but like teachers, parents, like, in their head, it's for a child's best interest. Like they think that child should get good grades and they think that they should do X, Y, and Z with their free time, and they think they should behave a certain way. And it's all because they want the child to like have a certain outcome in life that's like happy and successful. But I just think there's big danger in that when you focus more on that, like your agenda and what you want for a child, versus getting to know the child and like help them grow into themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Campus for the camper.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. And I just really liked that. Like, I liked that line of like, oh, wait, you don't have my mom's agenda or anyone's agenda.
Well, and I think that that's really why therapy works, is because the therapist is unbiased.
There's no agenda.
They don't have skin in the game other than just genuinely caring for the client. And so because of that, therapy is for the benefit of the client, and the client gets to decide what the goals of therapy are. So in that case, you know, even though she was a minor, and Cody last week talked a little bit about, you know, working with minors and how confidentiality works, you know, when it comes to that kind of thing. She got to decide what she wanted to work on. And really the reason why it's structured that way is because if it wasn't, there's zero chance that she would have opened up. There's zero chance that she would have felt safe. There's zero chance that therapy would have been productive.
Yeah.
Because unless you know you can trust somebody as a therapist, you're just not going to be able to work.
Yeah. Amen.
What else you got?
Really, I think the only other thing was just I really loved hearing her talk about art therapy and like the interventions that she did. And oh, I forgot, one of them was it's kintsugi, which is, I think, KINTSUGI, and it's also, there's another longer word for it as well, like kintsukari or something like that. But anyways, it was when they tore the pieces of the heart and then, you know, put them back together with gold, and it's like a Japanese art. But that is something that one of the first times that I went to see someone, to see like a therapist to talk to, it's in the first session, it's something they brought up. So that's, I've just always, that art form and that, you know, tying it into like people's stories and like brokenness is really close to my heart and really cool. And I think that's the coolest thing ever, to do it as like a hands-on art activity. And what I was going to say originally was like, I am absolutely not an artistic person. I just am not talented in that way. As your husband,
I completely disagree with that.
I
have a Christmas present from last year that can totally prove my point.
No. That took a lot of that just took a lot though. Like, I can't just freehand.
Yeah, but I mean,
you know, traditionally,
this is something this is something I tell people all the time. Like, creativity doesn't mean art.
I know. That's why I'm saying I'm not artistic.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm not creative. Anyways, the point of this was to say that's one of the reasons why I think art therapy is so cool, and like art interventions are so cool, because it's not like, hey, do this piece of art and, you know, here's how it's done. It's, hey, express your insides through this like visual medium. And so you can't get it wrong. It's just expressing what's inside of you. And then when you get done with that, there's this, you have like a tie to it, like an emotional tie to it, because it's expressing something, it's a
piece of you that's been put down.
Yeah. So I just think it's the coolest thing ever. I think it's cool that she does stuff like that with her clients, and then her clients get the opportunity to express themselves in that way.
Yeah.
Super cool, Christa. Super cool.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was her or somebody else that was telling me, you know, even asking if a client can't articulate an emotion, well, can you put a color to it?
Yes, it was her.
Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else to add? I wish that we could have thought of kintsugi while we were talking. I have now bookmarked the article in Wikipedia, and we'll look into it more.
Mm-hmm. It's very cool.
Well, I think I know your answer, but Anastasia, buy, rent, or pass?
Buy, definitely.
I'm going to say rent. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Just because there were some parts of it that I still felt a little confused by, that I didn't think was super clear, and there's parts where I think the tone's all over the place. Like,
we'll watch it again.
and for a kids movie, there sure is a lot of skin and muscle melting off of bones.
Exactly. That's why it's cool.
Okay. Note to self: make sure I buy all of our kids' movies. All right. Well, I mean, it is still rather early, and we've got a Bachelorette finale to watch.
We sure do.
So I think that it's safe to say that we can raise the lights, lower the curtain, and say that for this week, the theater is closed.